There is one creation that we have developed in the industrialized world in which it doesn't matter whether it is a rich nation or poor. There will always be a vast number of challenges and complications. And this is the megacity. As of 2018, depending on who is doing the assessment, there's somewhere in between 30 to as many as 50 of these cities worldwide, most of which belong to Asia, with India and China ranking at the top of the list. The United States is home to two. New York, which was actually the first in the world to cross the 10 million mark in the 1930s, and Los Angeles. There are similar challenges that these metropolitan behemoths have to face. Although all of the challenges are present in each of these urban environments, when you get into the newly industrialized world, the challenges are massively amplified. For instance, almost never in the West would you see smoke as the environment. In Mumbai, it's a daily occurrence. Poor air quality is just one of the obstacles. Other common aspects of these highly populated metro regions are sanitation, slums, more often seen in the developing nations, overpopulation, gentrification, urban sprawls, high traffic and population density, and an abnormally high homeless population. Mumbai is not the largest city in India, but it is the wealthiest. The cost of real estate here would be unaffordable for the majority of inhabitants in the developed world. Given that the GDP of the nation is a nominal $1,500 per head, the cost of real estate for the majority of Mumbaikars is unimaginable. Because of this dramatic wealth disparity, the singular aspect of this city impossible to overlook is its slum population. As you look over the city in a bird's eye view, most of what you'll see will be makeshift housing. It's difficult to conceive of anything like this in the United States, but it was only 80 years ago, when our economy was in stagnation, that we had Hoovervilles. The stigma that is often seen for those experiencing homelessness in the United States is not the same as those which compose the slum population in Mumbai.
The first things first, we must understand the distinction in the West there has to be is between slum and homeless. In the Western mind, this is a grey area, or maybe not a grey area. They consider the people in the slum to be homeless. This is not true. Most of the people living in slums are gainfully employed.
These aren't folks that society has cast aside and forgotten about. It's the majority of the community, estimated to be somewhere around 60%.
The reason they are in that slum is one reason, is that unfortunately the jobs in India are, I won't say limited, but by and large in a greater number in the metro cities. They are all flocking here because this is where their jobs are. The person has to stay somewhere close to his work. This is where these little shanties and slums start mushrooming.
Yeah, I think if you look at India, there's almost 74 million people do not have access to affordable shelter. That's a huge call, for the government. I think so I think government has a very important role to play. I think the new government is talking about housing for all by 2022.
For all?
For all. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I think it's an ambitious vision or target.
So when they say housing for everybody in 8 years, that they think they're going to get rid of the slums in 8 years?
Well, either they get rid of the slums or they provide accommodation to these people. When we need to look at high-rise buildings, like I think what I've learned living in Manila is that socialized housing is clearly defined by the Philippines government, and then they are talking about 800,000 people who do not have access to shelter. So I think they are also looking at high-rise building in urban areas. Yeah, I think we need to look at high-rise building, and we need to look at infrastructure. We need to look at livelihood. We need to look at the social structure, and I think we need to have a holistic approach in terms of dealing with housing in urban setup.
In previous decades, building restrictions were a major issue. Over the years, Mumbai has become more and more vertical, increasing its walkability and gradually beginning to bring stability to the housing markets. Programs in the ilk of inclusionary zoning have been adopted. For example, when a builder wants to erect a housing structure where a slum is currently standing, he must first build a structure for the inhabitants of the slum before building his desired edifice. The building is marked with this symbol here to indicate this sort of housing arrangement. There is a lot to learn from these practices, especially when it comes to building vertically. Because if there is one issue that Los Angeles suffers in respect to common symptoms of megacities, it is the urban sprawl. Quite possibly the largest, most complicated on the planet. Just think of the landmass in comparison to other cities. You could take New York City and put it inside a municipal Los Angeles, and then add San Francisco and Boston and St. Louis, and you'd still have 37 square miles left over. In the metropolitan region, you could fit 4 Rhode Islands. The sprawl of metropolitan Los Angeles is really a societal preference. It's an overpopulated megacity that desperately wants to remain a small town, making its failure to urbanize more of a cultural issue protected by excessive regulation with a not-in-my-backyard mentality. Mumbai seems to have learned this lesson and appears to be taking more action in the matter. But housing aside, what's really the greatest threat that a country suffering from extreme poverty faces? In some cases, it's starvation. That's less of an issue in urban areas of India. The most pressing issue is sanitation. It's so critical that even programs like Habitat for Humanity India have started to move more towards this matter than housing alone. The United Nations Population Division estimated that in 2015, on average, 156,000 people died every day, 57 million people for the year. In 2018, the WHO estimated that the number of deaths of children 5 years and younger was 5.4 million, almost 10% of the whole figure. Impoverished countries see the brunt of these numbers. Pneumonia, malaria, and diarrhea-related diseases like rotavirus, dysentery, and cholera are the main causes. The CDC estimated that 2,195 children 5 years and younger die every day from diarrhea-related diseases alone. And 88% of the time it is due to unsafe water and inadequate sanitation and hygiene. For this reason, it should be evident that extreme poverty is by far the world's biggest killer.